Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to learn about hierarchical clustering algorithms. So before moving to hierarchical clustering algorithm, let's have a look on clustering. Actually, what is clustering? So we discussed in the last class also that what is clustering. Again, I'm going to give you one more example based on clustering. Let's say that we want to segregate the customers based on their incomes, like who are having low income, who are having medium income, or who are having higher income. So accordingly, we have made three groups like LIG, that is lower income group, MIG, that is medium income group, HIG, that is high income group. Now we are segregating our customers according to the similarities. So now you can see that we are having different kinds of data, like the yellow circles are there, the blue triangle is there, the pink star is there. Okay. So according to their similarities, we have segregated them in three different clusters. So that actually clustering is. Let's move ahead. Now we are going to talk about hierarchical clustering. It's again another type of unsupervised learning. It's an algorithm of unsupervised learning technique where we are grouping the unlabeled data points based on their similarities. Here again, we are making the clusters, making the groups, and we are assigning the data points in these groups based on their similarities. Okay. Now, in this hierarchical clustering, it is creating the clusters in a tree-like structure, which is called dendrogram. Here, further, we are having two kinds of categories under this hierarchical clustering. First is agglomerative hierarchical algorithms, and second is divisive hierarchical algorithm. Okay, so let's move with it. Now, in this hierarchical clustering algorithm, as I just told you, that it is having two types of algorithms, like one is divisive algorithm and another is agglomerative algorithm. So what is happening in these two algorithms, we're going to learn. So first, have a look on it. It will create a tree like structure which is called dendrogram. Okay. So now moving ahead with the algorithm, that is hierarchical agglomerative clustering. So what actually happens with agglomerative clustering technique, how we are using it? Here also we are having individual clusters, like individual data points we are having. Now, based on some similarities, we are making or we are assigning them to the clusters. So now this HAC, that is hierarchical agglomerative clustering, following the bottom up approach. Bottom-up approach is followed to merge the clusters together. Here we are having individual data points, and when this algorithm actually works, what will happen? They will combine the data points based on their similarities or based on the distance. Okay, so third point is dendrograms are used to represent the HAC. Here, as I told you, dendrograms are simply tree-like structures. Okay. Next is divisive hierarchical algorithm. So this algorithm behaves just opposite of agglomerative hierarchical clustering. In the agglomerative hierarchical clustering, we are having bottom-up approach, but in the divisive hierarchical algorithm, we are having top-down approach. It's just opposite of the agglomerative hierarchical cluster. Okay, so all the data points are treated as one big cluster, and the process of clustering involves dividing the one big cluster into various small clusters. Okay, next, agglomerative technique. So what is actually happening, as I just told you, that we will be having individual data points in the individual clusters, and then based on some similarities or based on the distance, we will group them. We will make out the clusters, and finally Using agglomerative algorithm, we will be having only one final cluster. You can see in this picture that in the agglomerative, it's a bottom-up approach. You can see this arrow. We are having like data points P, Q, R, S, T. And based on some similarities, we are creating the clusters like PQ, ST, RST, and finally we are having only one cluster, that is PQRST. That was about agglomerative. Now divisive. Just told you that it's just opposite of the agglomerative algorithm. And it's a top-down approach. So here we are having only one cluster and now it will split down in different clusters, and finally we will be having individual clusters in the end. So this is happening using divisive algorithm. You can see the arrow sign. It's top-down approach. Okay. Now, what actually happening in the agglomerative hierarchical clustering? So, some steps are given here. So, what actually we are doing or how this algorithm is working. So, you can see it's a bottom-up approach. So, first of all, you will keep this thing in your mind. It's a bottom-up approach. Okay. Now, compute the proximity matrix. Whenever we will solve any problem using agglomerative hierarchical clustering algorithm, we will compute the proximity matrix. And then let each data point be a cluster. So here each data points are behaving like individual clusters. Okay. Now combine the two closest clusters and accordingly update the proximity matrix. So after combining the clusters or individual data points into the clusters, we have to update the proximity matrix. Up till when? Until we reach to a single cluster. That's actually how this agglomerative algorithm works. Now let's move. Now here there are some techniques we are following in this hierarchical agglomerative clustering. So what are those? There are single linkage, complete linkage, average linkage, word linkage. So there are these techniques which we are following in the hierarchical agglomerative clustering. Okay. So what is this? So in the single linkage, we are using minimum distance among the data points. In the complete linkage, we are finding out the maximum distance among the data points. Okay. In the average linkage, we are finding out the average of the data points. The distance which is given between the data points, we will find out the average among them and then it will be in the continuation. The fourth point, that is word linkage. This linkage actually analyzes the variances of the clusters. We will see in more depth in next videos, but let's move for now. You can see that in the single linkage, minimum distance or distance between closest elements in the clusters. You will be having data points, you will be having a matrix where the data points distance would be given. There you will check out that which data point, which cluster is having minimum distance. That would be my first cluster. And in the continuation, we will follow this process and finally we will reach to one cluster. That's actually single linkage works. Now, complete linkage. In the complete linkage, we are finding out the maximum distance among the data points. So first of all, we will make out one cluster of maximum distance and then will be in the continuation and finally we will reach to one cluster. Now, average linkage. In the average linkage, we will find out the average of the distances of the data points. Of any pair, we will find out the average among them and then we will find out the minimum value among them. We will understand these all linkage in depth again. So don't worry. Further, for now, we are having little knowledge about these kind of techniques. Now, centroid method. In this centroid method, what is happening actually, let's say that we are having two clusters. And between these two clusters, we are having two centroids of each cluster. Okay, now we will find out the distance of the data points from that centroid. and then that data point will be in that cluster. Okay, so that is actually centroid method. And finally, Voigt's method. So as I told you, Voigt's method works or analyzes the variances among the clusters. Okay, so objective of Voigt's method to minimize the total within cluster variances. Okay, let's move. Now dendrogram. Here in the hierarchical clustering technique, it creates a tree-like structure which is actually called dendrogram, where we are having leaf individuals and root, that is a cluster, individual units. Now a cluster at level 1, it's the merger of its child cluster at level I plus 1. Okay, now let me show you one diagram of this dendrogram. You can see that here we are having individual clusters, individual data points. So anything you can call them, individual clusters or data points. Here, based on some linkage techniques, we are making out the clusters. Maybe we are using single linkage, maybe we are using complete linkage or average linkage or broad linkage, and then this kind of dendrogram will come as the output. Here now I'll tell you one more thing, that hierarchical clustering actually associated with the heat maps. So I hope you have heard about heat maps. If not, then please explore about heat maps. Let me give you a small hint about heat map. That is when heat map actually gives us the information or correlation of two variables. How strongly the variables are correlated with each other, we can analyze it through the heat maps. Okay, so here this heat map or this hierarchical clustering is representing actually that the red color, which is representing strongly or higher expression of gene, or blue color actually representing lower expression of gene. Okay, so this hierarchical clustering order the rows and column based on similarities. So it makes it easy to see correlation in the data using this heat map also. Okay. Now, here there are two kinds of heat maps you can see. One is without hierarchical clustering and another is with hierarchical clustering. So when we are having this clustering technique with us, so definitely similar things would be at one cluster and dissimilar things would be in another clusters. Okay, so one cluster will be totally dissimilar with the another cluster. So clustering main focus that within one cluster there should be similarity, whatever the objects are there in one cluster. Okay, now here heat maps also come with the dendrograms. Okay, as you can see here, they're also using dendrograms. Now we are, or you can say we can use different distance metrics like Euclidean or Manhattan distance metric. Both we can use to find out the distance among the data points. Okay, there is no biological reason to choose any one of them, but yeah, you can choose anyone based on the output, like how much insightful information you are getting among the data using these matrices. So you can decide by your own. Okay, now Manhattan distance, let's read something more about these distance metrics. So Euclidean distance may not be suitable while measuring the distance between different locations. So their Euclidean distance, it's not suitable. But if we wanted to measure a distance between two retail stores in a city, then Manhattan distance will be more suitable to use instead of Euclidean distance. Okay. Now, the distance between 2 points in a grid based on a strictly horizontal and vertical path. So the Manhattan distance is the simple sum of the horizontal and the vertical components. Next is Minkowski distance. What this is between two variables x and y. So when p equals 1, so Minkowski distance is equal to the Manhattan distance. And in the case where p is 2, so Minkowski distance is equal to the Euclidean distance. So keep these points in your mind. Let's move. Now you can see here actually how these matrices are working. So here Manhattan distance and the Euclidean distance, how they are finding out the distance using these distance metrics. So here you can see through the example that one triangular shape is given. Okay, so using Euclidean distance, we have to find out the difference among two data points, and then need to find out the square of them, and then we will add them and we will find out the square root of them. So you can see we are getting the result. Okay, so here we are using the Pythagoras theorem. Okay, and in the Manhattan distance, we are finding out the absolute difference among 2 points. So here x2 minus x1 plus y2 minus y1. So that's what actually we are doing using the Manhattan distance, and that's what we got as a result. So up to you which matrix you want to use. Now, space and time complexity of this hierarchical clustering algorithm. So space complexity. So hierarchical clustering technique requires very high space. When the number of observations in our data set is more, since we need to store the similarity matrix in the RAM. Because what is happening actually when we are making out the clusters based on some distance matrix, so we have to update our proximity matrix or time by time. Okay, so that those proximity metrics have to be stored in the RAM. So that's why we are using this space. So the space complexity is the order of the square of n. So space complexity, that is order of n square, where n is the number of observations, like how many clusters or how many data points you are having in that matrix. Now time complexity. So since we have to perform n iterations, because n data points, so n iterations would be there, and in each iteration we need to update the proximity matrix. So definitely, as I told you, when we will make out the clusters, we have to update the proximity matrix and also restore that matrix. So therefore, the time complexity is also very high. Okay, so the time complexity is the order of the cube of n. So keep these things in your mind. These are space complexities and the time complexity for this algorithm. Now, advantages of hierarchical clustering and disadvantages. So advantages is like we can obtain the optimal number of clusters from the model itself. Human intervention not required. Okay, dendrograms help us in clear visualization, which is practical and easy to understand. As I have already shown you dendrogram, it's very clear, like how many clusters are being formed, which clusters have been formed first. We can easily see through the visualization through this dendrogram. Now, there are some disadvantages also of this clustering technique, that is, it's not suitable for the large data sets. Why? Because of this high time and space complexities. Because if the data set would be large, so definitely we have to update the proximity matrix every time, and it's not easy to handle. Okay, now there is no mathematical objective for hierarchical clustering. And the last one, all the approaches to calculate the similarities between clusters has their own disadvantages. That's all about the hierarchical clustering technique. So before ending it, please keep in your mind that hierarchical clustering, it's a type of unsupervised learning technique where we are handling or we are dealing with the unlabeled data sets. I hope you have liked my video. If you have liked it, then please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.